This story contains descriptions some may find upsetting. Day 6. Frozen. The tops of the pine trees shrugged a little snow onto their lower branches as the breeze picked up. It began to carry off the fog, too, revealing the accident that lay down on the ground. The cracked radiator of the station wagon was hissing, sending out a plume of steam into the early morning air. The creak and squeak of one of the wheels, thrust awkwardly up in the air, became less frequent as the spinning slowed and eventually stopped. The hissing of the radiator became a gurgle, and it too finally went quiet, save for the occasional creak of a body panel, the chatter of a bird. All was quiet. Nancy lay like that for some time, but she wasn't to know that. Still held in by her seatbelt, face and shoulder down into the collapsed doorframe, sprinkled with broken glass. Nancy was the daughter of the town sheriff, Sheriff Hawthorne, and much like her father, rather enjoyed telling other people what to do without doing much of the opposite. She had never known a time when people didn't touch their hat to her dad as they shopped for groceries or delivered them hampers at Christmas and Easter that other families didn't seem to get. She had been the youngest ever harvest queen in the county when she was 15, and had won every year since. The laceration from behind her ear to her top lip gradually stopped bleeding. 1.5 miles back up the road, Bill crossed the 6-car lot outside the station to his Ford. He had just handed over to the desk sergeant on the morning shift and was glad to say there hadn't been any trouble. Nothing he would want to share with the sergeant, anyway. Nancy had come to the station in the early hours with the smell of brandy or some such on her breath. Bill was some years older than her. Hell, she was barely out of high school, but she always seemed to hang around him. The other rangers liked to tease that she liked him. Maybe he was the only one who ever told her no. Like an hour ago, when she demanded that he drive her home. As he swung his truck out onto Main Street and cranked the heater, he reassured himself that she could get herself home just fine. She'd hung around for so long, drinking their coffee and generally making an ass of herself, that she was her usual sober, bitchy self when she finally stalked to her car and slammed the door. If he had given her a ride, left the desk early, her hand would be halfway up his leg by now, and he would be in a heap of trouble. When he saw her tailgate upside down at the side of the road, he knew it was going to be a whole mess of trouble. He ran through the trail of glass and body trim to the driver's side, but there was no way in. He'd seen this type of thing so many times. He could tell she had rolled fully at least once, the body more round than square. Almost all the windows were out, and he only prayed to God she'd put her seatbelt on. What was worse, the car was a foot at most from an uneven ditch that gave way to a long slope down to Burgoo Creek, wending its way to meet the river that skirted the town. Bill didn't want to risk rocking her onto her wheels. Grabbing one of the flat tires, he gently lifted himself up to the passenger side, now the top, and was able to look down through the passenger door to where Nancy lay. "Nancy!" he shouted. Her eyes were closed and she wasn't moving. "Nancy, can you hear me?" He squinted at her chest, and when he could see the tiny movements of breath, the relief felt like a warm shower. But it was oppressively cold, and he could see her blood in a pool underneath her. "I'm going to get you out of here," he said, more to himself. He brought his right foot around, then his left, and lowered them both through the smashed window. He didn't want to step on her, and chose her seat as a foothold, which proved to be fatal. Snow had fallen and melted on the seat back behind Nancy and made the whole thing slippery. Bill's right foot shot out away from him, and his falling body weight made him kick the roof of the station wagon with force. He crumpled arse first into the center console, and the jolt started the car rolling towards the ditch. The world rotated, ground to sky, Nancy's unconscious face framed against the grey cloud for a brief moment before the body of a pine stopped them. The force sent Nancy's head into her window frame. Bill heard a crack, felt it in his stomach, and saw, as she came to a rest, a long protuberance just under the skin at the back of her neck. Blood began to drip from her ear and onto Bill's face. Bill screamed, but not for long. Folded like a piece of paper, rear end to sky, face to knees, he could barely breathe, but he could still see Nancy's lifeless body hanging above him now. He desperately wanted to move, but the thought also terrified him. The tumble into the ditch had been enough to take Nancy's life, and there was no way he would survive the fall down to the creek. He also knew that it could be hours before anyone came down this road or realized that either of them were missing. Bill was happy living as a bachelor, and the sheriff and his wife had long given up trying to keep tabs on Nancy's movements. He was as much at risk of freezing to death out here. Trying to control his short breathing, he assessed his options. The windshield was long gone, but at this angle, all he could see was a tree, too far to grab onto, and he had no sense of how far he might fall once he committed to leaving that way. He couldn't go up to Nancy, even if he wanted to. Crushed as he was, he had no way of fighting gravity directly. To his left, and to his amazement, at some point, the back of the passenger seat had been knocked and folded flat. Bill could see into the back seat and some room to maneuver. It wasn't out of the car, and any movement might take him and Nancy together down the slope, but it was that, or wait. And wait he did for a few tearful moments, before deciding it was his only choice. He started by pushing himself away from the dash, hoping that that direction wouldn't upset them. As he started to clear the passenger seat with his upper thighs, he was able to bend one leg and bring his whole frame around into the back seat. That's when the car began to move. The back started first, the steady rumble of snow and forest litter being scraped aside by the car body. The whole interior of the car became bright to Bill as adrenaline exploded through his body. His whole innards came up to his throat, the open windshield slowly revealing the edge of the road he was about to leave forever. There was little point in being careful now, and, with pain that he both felt and didn't, he pulled himself around onto all fours, the lining next to the rear seat under his knees, his hands on the moving snow under the open passenger window. And something black, long and thin, under his hands. It could have been a wire, a tree root, Bill had no way of knowing, but he grabbed it. He grabbed it with both hands, pressing his knuckles and face into the snow below it. The car was accelerating, tortuously and in a way they never should. Bill kept his arms, shoulder, neck and chest rigid, but allowed his lower body to be moved by the car as it moved away from the road. He felt his boot catch on something and, with eyes closed, he shook his leg like it was electric, freeing his foot, freeing the car, as it slid, like some monstrous glove, off Bill's body. The edge of the window scraped his back and thighs as the station wagon groaned and squealed and then crashed away down the hill. Bill clung to his lifeline with his eyes closed for a long time. Then he cried. Then he laughed. He stood up, and then he vomited. He looked down the hill at the mess in the creek and heard the radio in his truck chirrup. Why didn't he think of the radio?